Aloha, everybody. I'm Ernie Lau, the Manager and Chief Engineer for the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. I just want to thank you all for taking the time to come out tonight. It's not easy. It's a weeknight and everybody's really busy, so I really mahalo for coming out tonight. We are going to be sharing about some rate increase proposals that we're seeking community feedback. And this is the first of 3 community informational meetings that we'll be holding around the island. But before I get started, I want to do some quick introductions here. First of all, we have 2 board members, 2 water board members here tonight. Mr. Max Graham, if you could, Max, raise your hand. Thanks. He sits on the water board. Also, Mr. Jonathan Kaneshiro. So the Board of Water Supply is oversight is provided through a 7-member appointed water board, appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. So they have the authority to adopt rates. They have the authority to approve budgets, our operating budget and our capital improvement budget. We also have with us the Board of Water Supply team members that work with me at the BWS. I'll start with our Deputy Manager, Mr. Erwin Kawata. Jadine Urasaki, head of our Capital Projects Division. That's our design and construction of all the water system improvements. Mr. Mike Matsuo, head of our Land Division. He's responsible for the oversight of all the BWS properties island-wide. Joe Cooper is our Waterworks Controller, handles our Finance Division. Jennifer Elfline is head of our Customer Care Division. And also Henderson Uhiba, he is our IT division. In the back there, sitting quietly, is Mr. Jason Nikaido, Field Operations. So that's an important person to get to know, because when there's a water main break, it's his division that is responsible to fix and repair the breaks, and they work until it's done. If that requires them to work through the night into the next day until the repair is accomplished. We also have, next to Jason, Raylin Nakabayashi, head of our Executive Support Office. She handles our budget and other procurement and other responsibilities, including security. To ensure that our water is safe to drink, we have a division called the Water Quality Division. And the acting head is Mr. Ron Fenstermacher. They run over, 30,000 plus tests a year to check on the safety of our drinking water to make sure it meets all federal and state regulations. Our Water Resources Division is headed by Mr. Barry Usugawa, a resident of the Windward side here too. And also heading our communications team is Kathleen Paihinui, and sitting next to her is Kathleen's mom, visiting from Chicago. So nice to have you. And also the communications team around the room in the back tables there, running all the equipment here. They help set it up, and they're going to help break things down. We also have the person responsible to operate the Board of Water Supply systems island-wide, Mr. Kevin Ihu. Kevin, he doesn't get much sleep every night because he's always thinking about how to make sure everybody gets water. But we have over 400, almost 400 facilities across the island that he's responsible to make sure they're operating properly. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dave Eberseld, our consultant that's working on our water rate study and our proposed water rates. He is from the company called CDM Smith. Dave?
Can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. So welcome tonight. It's great to see you all here. We've got a nice intimate group tonight. So I'm going to take my time going through the presentation. If you've got a question, if you see something along the way, go ahead, raise your hand and ask me, and I'll stop and try and answer it then. If it's something that's coming up, then I'll say, hey, I'm going to get to that in a second. But if it's a question on that slide and we can answer it then, great. We're also going to have plenty of time afterwards to answer any questions that you may have. So that's the plan. And why don't we just get started? Probably the most important three words on this slide are Cavaiola. And when I think about this, it reminds me of several things, but in particular, living on an island, all that we have is what we have here, right? And so that's particularly true with water, and all life depends on water. And so the conversation we're having tonight about water rates and charges becomes ever more important, and we'll dig into that here as we go through. Now, the Board of Water Supply was established in 1929, and as the manager said, it's a semi-autonomous agency, part of the city and county of Honolulu, has its own board who is responsible for setting policy and, among other things, establishing water rates. So it's semi-autonomous, and the board is funded by ratepayers, solely by ratepayers. There's no property tax revenue that goes to the board, nothing like that. So it's about water rates and then delivering that water and charging for the water that's delivered. We're not talking about wastewater tonight. That's a separate agency, separate part of the bill. I'll show you what a bill looks like in a little while, but we're talking about water tonight. So the board delivers safe, dependable, and affordable water to your tap every minute of every hour of every day. And that's a big responsibility. And to accomplish that, there's a large and complex system. It includes sources like tunnels and shafts and nearly 200 wells. There's some of those that need treatment. So there's 13 treatment facilities, 172 potable water reservoirs, 192 booster pumps, over 2,100 miles of pipeline to get that from the sources to your homes and businesses, 21,000 fire hydrants. All of this is serving 170,000 or so customers, a population of about 1 million people, about 145 million gallons of water every day. So as I mentioned, all the money to fund the board comes from delivering water to you and people paying for that. And this is where that money goes. So if we start at the top of the pie and you go clockwise, the first two slices, the first one in blue is the capital improvement program. And this is new projects, new facilities, new wells, treatment systems, replacement pipelines, things like that. And some of it is paid for in cash from the rates that are collected every month. And some of it is the board borrows money to spread those payments out over time and to make it more affordable. So if you add those two things together, the amount that's paid for in cash and then the repayment of loans, that totals 27% of the budget. And so those are the first two slices of the pie in blue and purple. The next two slices are in orange, employee salaries, and in the light blue is health and retirement benefits. And if we add those two things together, that's about 29% of the budget. The next slice, the gray slice, that's for the operations and maintenance of the system. That's about $86 million a year, or about 31% of the budget. And then you can see the green slice, that's electricity. And that's a pretty big number. That's almost $33 million on electricity every year. And the most expensive cost is moving water around, right? Pumping it out of the ground and moving it around to the island, around the island to your homes. So that's about 12%. And then there's some minor costs that total about 1%. So in total, the operating fund budget is about $276 million in this current fiscal year. Well, the last set of rate increases was approved in 2018, and they've been in effect from 2018 until June of this last year, of this current year. And with that money, the board's pretty proud of the things it's accomplished with the additional money that's been collected. That money has been invested in nearly 500 different projects in the phases of planning, design, and construction. And you can see the breakout here, but about $770 million invested in new infrastructure to improve the overall reliability and dependability of the water system. Unfortunately, if we all think back to March of 2020 and the global pandemic that we all experienced and have all been dramatically impacted by, It upended a lot of things, right? And that includes a number of things for the board. One of them is a dramatic shift in water use patterns. If you think about the near immediate shutdown of the island's largely tourism-driven economy, people going home, non-residential water use dropped, residential use went way up, and that creates a lot of uncertainty and need to change operations around. The global pandemic resulted in major disruptions to supply chains around the globe. That set into effect an inflationary cycle that we're still in the midst in. If you look at the green line here, that shows the total inflation since 2019. And it's gone up a total of almost 21% from 2019 to today. So that's the top green line. Over that same period of time, if you look at the yellow line, that's the increases in BWS's water rates. So there's a big gap between those two things, right? And that's a loss of purchasing power. And when we talk about a gap of 8-9% on a budget of $276 million, that's a lot of money in a given year, right? Nearly $25 million or so in a gap. Other things have happened have been power costs. And so there's a lot going in this slide. So let's start at the top on the purple line. That's the Board of Water Supply's total usage in kilowatt hours going back to June of 2020. And the dashed purple line shows a downward trend in that power usage. That's great news. The board's doing a lot to actively conserve energy and try and reduce its power bills. During the same time, that green line has gone up, and that's the energy cost factor that Hawaiian Electric tax on, right? As energy costs go up, they increase that cost factor. And that's gone up from 10 cents a kilowatt hour to now about 30 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's tripled. And the consequence of that is in the orange line. That's the monthly cost that BWS pays. You can see it started, if you look at the axis over on the left-hand side, at about $2 million a month, and now it's up at around $3 million a month. In total, if we look at fiscal year 2023, electricity costs were about $33 million or 20% over what was anticipated. These are big numbers. Finally, you've all heard about Red Hill, right? It's been in the news, and the board has been a passionate advocate regarding issues around Red Hill. Well, the upshot of that is that large investments in new facilities are required. Currently, those investments are being made in new monitoring wells and exploratory wells to find new sources that are outside the path of the contamination. The need here is to replace 17.5 million gallons per day of potable water well pumping capacity. And the full impact on water quality and supply, the impact to operations and maintenance costs, and the ability to recover those costs from the Navy is yet undetermined. So in light of all of this, the board has taken a lot of actions to tighten its belt. We talked about those increases in energy costs. They've chosen not to pass those energy cost increases thus far on to you, the customers. There has been deferral of purchases of replacement vehicles and other equipment, and also the deferral of less critical capital projects. The benefits have been the ability to hold to the currently approved rate increases from 2018 to 2023. And also, when we look at the current year operations and maintenance budget, holding it flat, no increases in that budget, despite high inflation. So that's a lot. But the reality today is that rates are going to need to increase. And in thinking about these increases, it's a balance between safe and dependable water supply and maintaining water rate affordability. So the more that you invest in that dependability, the more money you spend, the worse affordability gets. And if you try and maintain affordability, you sacrifice system dependency and reliability. So that's as I said, a delicate balance to strike. So what's being proposed with the rate increases here is to invest about $1.26 billion over the next 6 years in 132 capital projects. And there's a lot going on in this slide. So let's just kind of work from the bottom end. If you look in that big gold bar, those are sources. So the x-axis over on the left-hand side, that's expenditures in millions of dollars. So you can see 50 million, 100 million, 150 million. And then the years are down along the x-axis. So what this is showing, if you look at that gold ribbon, is that there's going to be a lot of investment in new sources. Initially in the monitoring and exploratory wells that are part of the Red Hill response that I mentioned. And then for the construction of a new seawater desalination plant, the island's first in Kaleloa. And then you can see it kind of ticks back up towards the outer years with replacement sources to replace that 17.5 million gallons per day of production. If we go up to the next bar, that light blue color, that is facilities. So that includes things like security, control systems, facility improvements. You can see that's a pretty even, constant level of spending throughout the period. Then there's that green color, and you see the spending there goes up a lot in the last year. That's an investment in new reservoirs, new storage reservoirs at Waiava. The dark blue line is pump renewal and replacement, those facilities that move the water around the island. And then finally, the brown bar at the top, that is new and replacement pipelines, a total proposed investment of $425 million over the period to install or replace over 41 miles of pipeline. So that's what's being proposed. Yeah.
So my question is, the new and replacement pipelines is when a large water supply line breaks frequently in Honolulu, and millions of gallons of water, drinking water, are lost, and you have to do emergency repairs. Is that part of that brown swath there, or
Yes.
is that something else?
Oh, that's replacing lines that break as part of that brown box.
Why do they keep breaking? They're just old?
Let me tell you, every water agency across the country, their pipelines break. And on a national average, they break it about 15 times per 100 miles of pipe. So it's common. The Board of Water Supply's break numbers are about the national average.
When that water is lost, who pays for it?
Well, we all do.
The costs to operate the water system. So everybody pays for it. Whether you live in Kaneohe, Waianae, Honolulu, East Honolulu, we all contribute toward that cost. And our goal in fixing the main breaks is to fix it as quickly as we can. So what we have is 2,100 miles of pipeline around the system of various ages, going back to like 100 years ago, all the way to the recent times. And a lot of problems occur. I think corrosion is a big factor. Our metallic pipes corrode, and we have some really old cast iron pipes in the system. So the pipeline replacement program is to try to reduce the number of main breaks. But one thing we're also doing, and I know you're an engineer because we were talking before this, is actually to try to locate where there's a leak on a pipe before it becomes a catastrophic main break. And so what we're doing is leveraging, the latest thing is we're leveraging now satellite technology that can be able to detect chlorinated water on the ground and a little bit below the ground. I was kind of amazed that this could be done. But from space, there's these satellites that circle overhead. They take images of our island, and they locate areas where there's chlorinated water, which we think is a leak from our system. And we then target leak detection crews to go out and focus on these, what we call points of interest. And it's been about 50% successful hit rate. And that's pretty good. So that's really improved our field operations leak detection crew efficiency. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Anything else before I move on? Yeah, please.
I'm Marisa Murillo from Kahalu. In that monitoring and exploratory wells section, it's my understanding that we really don't have much of an infrastructure and water supply, particularly with all the development going on in Waikiki and Center Island and out on the west side. I guess it's how much water do we actually have to supply all these new developments? And does that all factor into the expense that we're talking about right now?
Great questions.
Okay, so thank you for the question. Ma'am, we have developed back in 2016 a 30-year plan looking ahead 30 years. And in that plan, we projected what the future water demand would be based on DPP or Department of Planning Permitting's estimates of population around different parts of the island. So what we see that we have enough to supply in most areas, but we have to develop more supply in the Honolulu and the Ewa area because of the growth. So we're keeping pace with that. The other thing to look at is the total capacity of our freshwater resources. So the State Water Commission, which regulates our water resources on most of the island of Oahu, they have something called estimated sustainable yield or capacity that can be sustained by these freshwater resources. And right now there's quite a bit of extra capacity still there. However, the caveat being something called climate change. And what we don't know is where rainfall might go in the future. So our groundwater originates as rain falling on our watershed areas, percolating down into the lava rock and recharging it underground aquifers. So right now we feel we have enough, but we have to develop more wells to be able to keep up with all the growth.
Thank you. And in connection with that, with all of your meetings at the Kaho'u Neighborhood Board and all of our concerns about other parts of the island taking our water, we still don't feel so secure that there are supplies enough on the rest of the island to handle the development that's in the works. So can you agree?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I would say that we are also always watching what's happening around the island and trying to stay ahead of it. And the long-term plan is very important for us. Always having at least a 30-year plan looking ahead to anticipate what might happen in the future. But thank you.
Yeah, great questions. So this gives you an idea of the types of needs in the system and what this money will pay for. And I want to talk a little bit about you, customers. And so the board has 5 different classes of customers, families of customers. First being single-family residential, and then multi-unit residential, agricultural, non-residential, which are businesses, government institutions, all the hotels, restaurants, whatnot, and then non-potable and recycled water customers. Now, we spend a lot of time talking about single-family residential customers because 90% of our customer accounts are single-family residential. And they use about 35% of our total water. Now, interestingly enough, they pay 95% of what we call the cost of service. That is, if you add up we can calculate the costs to serve these different customer classes. And if we add up all the costs to serve single-family residential customers and compare it to the amount of revenue collected from them in the fees to deliver water, we collect about 95% of the cost of service. If we look down at the orange bar, these are non-residential customers. These are businesses. They are about 5% of the total customer accounts, and they use 34% or so of the water. So in total, they use about the same amount of water as single-family residential. And you'll notice that they pay more than their cost of service. They pay about 117% of their cost of service. So where does that money go if they're paying more than their cost of service? Well, it goes to help make up the gap on single-family residential. And it also allows us to provide discounted rates to agricultural customers and to non-potable and recycled water customers. And that's to everybody's benefit, right? So it's a strong community value to support local agriculture. And it's also important to support non-potable and recycled water use. We all benefit from that because it saves the potable water for higher purpose uses, for drinking, for example. So this is an idea of, gives you an overview of the customer classes, the number of each customers, how much water they use, and their cost of service. So what we're talking about with water rates is water rates are being proposed for a 5.5-year period, with increases beginning January 1st, 2024. And they'd continue, those rates would be in effect through June of 2029. The increases in percentages that are being proposed are 10% on January 1st, 2024, and then another 10% at the start of the fiscal year, July 1st, 2024. And then each July thereafter through the period, 9%, then 8.5%, and then 8% and 8%. So those are the annual increases being proposed and the dates that they would become effective. It's important to note that all customer classes that we just talked about will have the same increase. Okay, so every customer class gets the same increase. But we have some tiered rates in our residential customers and agricultural, and the changes in the tiers may be a little bit different. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Residential, so this is an overview of the tiered rate structure that the Board of Water Supply has. And it's intended to do two things. One, to enhance affordability for customers who are least able to pay, and the other is to encourage conservation. So if we look at that top bar, that's single-family residential. The first tier is the first 2,000 gallons of usage in a month. So any usage between 0 and 2,000 gallons falls into that tier. We call that the essential needs tier. It's charged at a below cost rate of $4.46 per 1,000 gallons. And the purpose of that below cost rate is to help support affordability for customers who are least able to pay. About 10% of BWS's customer bills are for 2,000 gallons a month or less. The next tier is from 2,000 to 6,000 gallons per month. The cost for water usage in this tier is $5.25 per 1,000 gallons currently. And about half of BWS's customers use less than 6,000 gallons a month, and about half use more than that. The next tier, or tier 3, goes from 6,000 to 30,000 gallons of usage. That's currently charged at $5.85 per 1,000 gallons. And then the top tier is usage above 30,000 gallons a month. Actually, about 3% of our water bills, those customers are using more than 30,000 gallons a month. That's actually more than 3 times the average single-family residential use. That's a lot of water. Anyway, that gets our top rate of $9.25 per 1,000 gallons. There's a similar tiered structure for multi-unit residential. Although the tiers, with the exception of essential needs, the tiers are set a little bit lower because multi-unit residential doesn't use as much water for outdoor irrigation. So we set the tiers a little bit lower to account for that. So what's being proposed is an increase to limit the increase for the essential needs tier to 2.5% per year. As I said, that's a below cost rate for the first 2,000 gallons of usage. All customers, all residential customers pay that below cost rate for their first 2,000 gallons of usage. Now there's a lot going on here, so let's break it down. The tiers that I just explained are shown along the bottom. So you see tier 1, 0 to 2,000 gallons. Tier 2 is that 2,000 to 6,000 and so forth. And the blue bars is the current rate tier, and the orange is what it would be on July 1st, 2028. Remember I said the tier 1 increases would be limited to 2.5% per year. So if you look to the left-hand side of the chart and you compare the height of the blue bar and the height of the orange bar, they're pretty close to each other. In fact, in terms of dollars per 1,000 gallons, it goes up less than $1 per 1,000 gallons over this 5.5-year period. If you look at the other end, which is tier 4, these are for the top 3% of customers using the most amount of water. The blue bar shows the current rate for usage over 30,000 gallons a month. That's $9.25 per 1,000. And that's proposed to go up to $18.02 per 1,000 gallons on July 1st of 2028. There's incremental increases each year, and that looks like this. That's what this chart shows. So the yellow is the tier structure that we just talked about. The first yellow line is the essential needs tier. It's currently at $4.46 per 1,000 gallons, and it would go up over this period to $5.17 per 1,000 over on the far right-hand side, top line. The examples by year are shown for each of the other tiers. And I pointed out the example of the tier 4 usage. You can see it's currently $9.25 per 1,000. It would go up to $18.02 per 1,000. Now, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what those charges per 1,000 mean, because we get a water bill and how much water do we use? So let me get into that a little bit. Let me first start with how to calculate your water bill. So, as I said, it's based on how much water you use, and there's also a monthly customer charge that everybody pays, okay? So this is an example for a customer using 8,510 gallons of water per month. The first thing we do is we round that down to the lowest 1,000 gallons. So not 8,500, but we round it down to 8,000 gallons, or 8 kgals for short. So the first two, they're using 2 increments of water in the essential needs tier. And then they're using 4 increments of water in the next tier, tier 2, right? Up to 6,000 gallons per month. And then they use, the next 2 is in the third tier. That's where so that totals 8. And you multiply the usage in each tier times the rate in each tier. So if you look at that top line, they have 2 kgals of usage. It's charged at $4.46 per 1,000 gallons for a total of $8.92 for the usage in that tier. We repeat that for each tier and then add on the monthly customer charge, which for this customer is $12.09, and they end up with a total bill of $53.71. Now, you don't have to remember this slide to see how your water bill is calculated, because when you get your water bill and it looks something like this, the front page is 2-sided. There's the green side and then there's the tannish side. The green side is BWS, and the $53.71 I mentioned is there circled. The tan side, that's the Department of Environmental Services. That's your sewer bill. That's a separate agency. Their rates are set totally separately. Their rates are approved by the city council. They're not part of the Board of Water Supply, but they're billed on the same bill. The calculations that I just went through with you are shown over here. The bill on the second page shows your usage, the amount of usage in each tier. It shows the rate that you're paying in each tier. It shows the monthly customer charge and then the total bill amount. So you can see all of this on your bill each month. That monthly customer charge that I mentioned. So for single family residential customers, nearly all of you have a 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter. And the good news is that you pay the lowest rate, currently $12.09 per month for that monthly customer charge. The proposed increases in that charge are shown across the top, and the customer charge is based on meter size. It pays not only for meter reading and billing, but it also pays for meter maintenance and repair, and those large meters cost a lot more to deal with than the small meter serving your residence. So that's why the charge varies so much among meter sizes. So let's talk about some example water bills now specifically. This is a 2,000 gallon per month total water bill, combining the quantity charge and the monthly customer charge. Again, about 10% of BWS's single family residential bills are for 2,000 gallons a month or less. So this customer is currently paying $21.01 per month. That's proposed to go up to $22.44 on January 1st, 2024. And then, so that's an increase of $1.43 per month. And then on July 1st, 2024, it would go up by $1.56. And then you can see the increases on each January 1st thereafter. Now, you remember I said that all the customer classes get the same rate increase, right? But it might vary depending on the tiers. So here's what I meant. Do you remember how much the increase was for all the customer classes in the first year? It was 10%. If you look at this customer's bill, it's only going up 6.8% in the first year. So single-family residential as a whole is going up 10%, but because we're keeping the increases in the essential needs tier lower, the lower water using customer isn't going to see the same increase. It's going to be less. And it stays that way through the whole period. Median water usage. This is the amount of water where, as I said, BWS, half of its customers use less than 6,000 gallons per month and half use more. So let's take a hypothetical bill at 6,000 gallons per month. This customer is currently paying just a penny over $42 per month. On January 1st, 2024, that would go up about $3.53, to $45.54. You can see the increases in the subsequent years. On July 1st, 2028, it would be $65.58. And again, those increases each year along the bottom are less than that 10% overall that I told you, because all the customers get the benefit of that lower cost first 2,000 gallons a month. In fact, if we look at the average water bill, the average quantity of usage for a BWS single-family residential customer is 9,000 gallons per month. They currently pay $59.56 per month. That would go up by about $5.56 on January 1st, 2024. Again, you can see the increases going out to July 1st, 2028, when it would be $97.80. And because they also get the benefit of that lower cost first 2,000 gallons of usage, they're also not quite seeing quite the same overall increase as the customer class as a whole, right? It's not 10% in the first year, it's a little less than that. And it's a little less in each of the subsequent years. So that's the benefit of the tiered rate structure in trying to encourage conservation. You can keep your rate lower if you're using less water. Well, who pays for that? What's being proposed is that it's the highest water users. This is customers with usage up in the fourth tier, over 30,000 gallons of usage a month. Only 3% of BWS's single-family residential customers are using that much water, but it's a lot of water. It's more, as I said, it's more than 3 times what the average single-family customer uses in a month. Their rate is currently their bill is currently $228.66. That's proposed to go up to $257 on January 1st, and then up another $30 on July 1st. And you can see the increments there. The total increase in their monthly bill over this period is about $185 a month. Okay? BWS's water rates are structured very deliberately, very purposefully. A low monthly customer charge so that you have the ability to control your water bill through the amount of water that you use, then lower quantity charges for lower amounts of usage, and the highest quantity charges for those who are using way more than their fair share. Multi-unit residential rates. Here's the rate structure that's being proposed. This is again, dollars per 1,000 gallons. In the essential needs tier, multi-unit residential customers pay $3.77. Now, how do we figure this out? We take the total usage in the building, divide it by the number of dwelling units, and then apply the tier structure. So it's based on multi-unit residential bills are influenced by the number of dwelling units in the building. So Again, you can see the tiers being the tier structures in the yellow, the current cost per 1,000 gallons in the pink, and the proposed cost per 1,000 gallons in blue. Let's look at some sample water bills. If we look at the top line, this is a building with 272 dwelling units, a 3-inch meter, because keep in mind that the meter charge is based on meter size, and monthly usage of 7,000 gallons per dwelling unit. Their current bill for the entire complex is $8,619. And on January 1st, that would go up to $9,462. And then you follow the line across and you can see the increases. Yeah, and come on up to the microphone, please.
So their usage then is divided by the number of units, no matter how much my unit uses versus his unit or your unit?
That's right, because these buildings have a single meter going into them. There's no ability to measure the amount of usage in individual units,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a fact. Anything about people that are in these units that are really low income? Any kind of
Not within the
monitoring or-
multi-unit residential program.
well, like if they're living in a multi-unit, and that
Well,
doesn't have to be an
so-
apartment, right?
So there's an interesting complication here when we talk about multi-unit residential. And that is that the tenant doesn't ever see a water bill, right? Because it's the property owner or the property manager that's getting the water bill and paying the water bill. Another uncertainty is different property owners, different property managers pass those costs on to their tenants differently and incorporate it into their HOA fees or charge a utility charge. It's all structured differently, and all that is completely outside of the board's control. Great question. Let's go to the bottom row. So here it's 277 dwelling units. So about the same number as the first row, but they have an 8-inch meter and their average use is a lot more per dwelling unit. And you can really see the difference in the bill, right? Instead of $8,600 in the first example, this building is paying nearly $20,000 a month for a water bill. Non-residential customers, we talked about them a little bit earlier. These are businesses, hotels, restaurants, government entities. They're paying more than their cost of service, as I mentioned, and they pay a consistent rate of $5.27 per 1,000 gallons. The more water they use, the higher their bill is, but there isn't a tiered rate structure in non-residential. And that's because these types of businesses are so divergent that it's nearly impossible to figure out how to compare apples and apples to set up a tier structure that could cross all these different customer types. They don't have the type of uniform usage patterns like residential does. Yeah.
Regarding your restaurants and the charges, I know since something like 93, it's been a policy that they're not supposed to serve water unless asked by the customer. And I know in the January bulletin that you guys put out, that was one of the issues. And I've called your office a couple of times asking to be deputized so I could address these people in the numbers of restaurants that I go to, which isn't that much, but 90% of them just bring water. A couple of times I don't want to kind of like passed myself off as a board of water supply person.
We can get you a green shirt.
When I commented that the Board of Water Supply doesn't want you doing this, they kind of thought, oh, who's this lady talking about the Board of Water Supply doesn't want me doing this? And I'd say thank you. But anyway, I know that article also said about getting placards for these places. but you really need to do a campaign with the restaurants. And, and I'd love to be deputized. I really would. But anyway, that's another thing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. There used to be a former manager, Mr. Kazu Hayashida, and he used to be known, I think, as the water sheriff. And maybe I can say, you're the water deputy. But thank you. That's an excellent suggestion. We'll go and we reach out to the Hawaii Restaurant Association because, again, and we'll keep that up. Yeah, if I can get your name later, then I can get you a deputy sheriff star. Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah, great comments. Okay, non-residential rates are shown here. As I said, it doesn't have nearly as many rows in this table because they pay the same rate per 1,000 gallons of usage. So you can see those current rate, $5.27 per 1,000. That would go up each year, and then on July 1st, 2028, it would be $8.80 per 1,000. And the percentage change is shown in each year that lines up with what I said before. Each customer class as a whole is getting the same increase. Let's look at some non-residential water bills. So let's start easy. This is a restaurant, say a fast food restaurant. 1.5 meter, their monthly usage is about 230,000 gallons per month. They currently pay $1,230 a month for water. That would go up on January 1st, 2024 to $1,352. And then each July 1st thereafter, you can see the totals ending up at $2,052 on July 1st, 2028. Let's go down to the bottom, a large shopping center. 3-inch water meter using just under 5 million gallons of water a month. They currently pay just about 26,000 gallons a month for that water. And that would go up to $43,253 over the period. And that would be the number on July 1st, 2028. You can see that large industrial user using 31,000 gallons a month and an 8-inch meter. They're currently paying $165,000 a month for water. Yeah, come on up.
I noticed you don't have golf course included in this. Do all golf courses use reclaimed water?
Not all of them. The accounting.
Can we make them?
So where recycled water is available, they're all using recycled water. Some golf courses have their own wells, so they're not on the BWS system. And there's 3 that are on the BWS system, or 1. Where'd Barry go? 3?
They use a lot.
So if there was recycled water available there where those golf courses are, then they could be on the recycled system. But there's a limitation. If you're not near where recycled water is, then it's too expensive to build the pipe to get that water there. It's just not cost effective. Any other questions on non-residential? I see Ernie wants to say something. I got peripheral
Yeah,
vision.
there is a golf course on this part of the island that we're working with them and talking to them about converting to recycled wastewater because it makes sense. They generate a lot of wastewater, and if they just treat it to R1 quality, they could use it on landscaping and on the golf course. So I think this kind of brings up the point about looking at alternative supplies of water. And there's something called...
Ernie, can you hold that a little closer?
Oh, I'm really sorry about this. I'm really bad with microphones here, but there's something called the One Water, which is looking at water of all different qualities and treating it all together in an integrated fashion. Looking at wastewater as a potential resource, stormwater as a resource, not only the potable water that we get from these underground aquifers, and how to manage that to the best interest of our community. So it's a very good question about getting golf courses to use recycled water. Thank you.
Okay. As I mentioned, there are discounted water rates for agricultural customers and for recycled water customers. Those will be continued. Agricultural water rates look like this. It's a tiered structure, kind of like single-family residential. In fact, the first two tiers are identical to single-family residential. But the third tier, which is all usage over 6,000 gallons, that's at a lower rate. And you can see here that currently that rate is $2.12 per 1,000 gallons. And the purpose of that is to encourage, to help support the farming community and to encourage local production of fresh produce. That's intended to continue, and I think I mentioned in total, agricultural customers pay about 60% of their cost of service. Non-potable and recycled water rates, these are also below cost. Again, this is not potable water. It's not water that can be used for drinking. The non-potable rate is currently $2.90 per 1,000. It would go up at the same percentage increases as all the other customer classes. And you can see at the end of the period, it would be $4.84 per 1,000. You can see there's a recycled rate, R1 Golf and R1 Other. So these are golf courses that are on the recycled system. They pay 65 cents per 1,000. That would go up to $1.08. And then R1 Other, these are landscape uses predominantly, $1.96 per 1,000 currently, going up to $3.27 per 1,000. And then reverse osmosis or demineralized water. This is used for specialized industrial purposes. It costs a lot more to produce this water because the salts, the minerals need to be taken out of it. So it's currently charged at $6.36 per 1,000 gallons. And that would go up at the same percentages as everything else to $10.62 per 1,000. There are in place fee waivers for affordable housing and for homeless housing. These waive the meter charge and what's called the water system facilities charge, which is a one-time connection fee. Probably none of you will ever have to worry about paying a water system facilities charge. It was paid for by the developer of your home in all likelihood. So for homeless and affordable housing units, that's being waived. To date, the total amount of those waivers since this program has been in place has been about $2.5 million, and it's proposed to continue those. Also, for buildings doing fire sprinkler retrofits, the meter charge is waived for those retrofits. BWS is also considering waivers of the water system facilities charge for new farmers who are installing a 3/4 or 1-inch meter connecting to the system for the first time. The amount of this program would be limited to $1 million, which equals the amount of money granted to the BWS for these types of purposes by the state. And obviously proof of being a viable commercial agricultural operation would be required, along with a water use plan to ensure that the farm is using water efficiently. Now, I mentioned that the rates are structured to encourage conservation. And as a result, BWS offers a number of existing conservation programs. There are device rebates available for rain barrels, for weather-based irrigation controllers, for high-efficiency clothes washers, low-flush toilets, all sorts of things. I'd encourage you to go look at the conservation menu on the Board of Water Supply's website. But there's also consideration of new conservation programs, including top water user outreach for hotels and other businesses, condos, townhomes, and even consideration of a direct install program for Kapuna living on their own, which could include free low flow shower heads and faucet aerators, home audits, and helping them make sure they're getting all the rebates that they're eligible for. I mentioned there's some other BWS charges. I mentioned the water system facilities charge. No changes to that. No changes to the standby charge for emergency interconnections. No charge for these no changes in these environmental regulation or power cost adjustment things. So Again, most of you don't ever need to worry about these things, but there is a fire meter standby charge monthly that some businesses pay and some multi-unit housing developments pay. It would go up at the same rates as all the other things we're talking about. So for 2-inch and smaller meters, this is currently $7.99 per month. That would go up over the period to $13.34 per month. Again, this applies exclusively to services for, automatic fire sprinklers connected to a fire alarm, fire hydrants, wet standpipes, those types of things. The process that we're going through for the past year and a half, there has been an in-depth technical evaluation of the revenue needs, the cost of service allocations, operations and maintenance requirements, capital projects, which non-critical projects could be pushed out into the future, what ones really have to get done, evaluating those types of things on increases, the customer impacts. And so now we're here down at the public input on draft proposal timeframe in the July through September window here. This is the first of 4 community meetings that are being planned. And the hope is that in the September-October timeframe, after considering all of your input, BWS's board will give formal consideration to this rate proposal. As I mentioned, this is the first of 4 community information meetings, so thank you so much for being here. There's one tomorrow in town, Wednesday at Kapolei, and next Wednesday in Mililani. All of them are from 6 to 8:30. There are a number of ways to give your input on the proposed rates other than being here tonight. You can send a letter or an email to the Board of Water Supply. You can call with questions. All the contact information is here. You can scan the QR code, any of these fancy things. And of course, we welcome any final questions you may have.
What age do you consider a kupuna?
I'm not going to answer that, but Ernie will.
Well, that's a tough question because I think I might fall in that category right now. What we plan to do is actually work with like the Department of Community Services, the Elderly Affairs Division, or other nonprofits around the island that work with the kupuna community to get referrals. This idea came up at a town hall meeting that the mayor had in Kalihi, and a nonprofit from St. Francis, so somebody from St. Francis there in Lidiha came up with this question, and we thought it was a great program.
And then one other question. When you talk about affordable, what is considered affordable? Like all the buildings that are going up in Honolulu, like Kaka'ako area, you have a very small percentage of it that's actually affordable.
So what we depend on in terms of the waiver program for affordable housing and also homeless housing is actually what DPP or the Department of Planning and Permitting will tell us or verify. It maybe a building might have 100 units and only 20 are affordable. The waiver would only, and I'm just using it as a hypothetical example, the waiver would only apply to the 20 units. The rest of the units have to pay the regular impact fee price.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, please. That's why we're here.
This rate adoption process doesn't seem to include a internal review of cost reduction and cost savings program in BWS. I mean, one thing I noticed is that you guys have a lot of Tacomas, which is the highest, most popular vehicle, but it's also, when I was pricing it, it's over $50,000. Semi-autonomous sounds good, but there's some danger in that where you guys can make your own decisions and there's no real oversight other than these meetings. So I wonder if you can address that. The other thing is the new and replacement pipeline breaks. When you break it down to, do the numbers, it breaks down to $10 million per mile, which seems exorbitant. I wonder if you can address that. And also at HECO, I've heard that we had the highest energy costs in the nation. It would behoove BWS as well as us to scrutinize the reason why we are the highest, and if it's, it's justified.
So first question, belt tightening.
Okay, so if you look at the what we shared on a slide, that the last year's operating budget and this year's operating budget, we basically kept it flat in spite of inflationary cost pressures, collective bargaining. So we basically economize wherever we can. So I want to say, Raylin, why don't you raise your hand? Raylin Nakabayashi is head of our executive support office, which handles the budget.
Little closer, Ernie.
And I want to ask all my division heads here, did we squeeze hard on you to cut your cost and to save money, to keep the budget flat? Anybody disagree with that? Sir, we've been working really hard. The other thing too, there was a slide that talked about the cost of electricity in our budget. For FY23, last fiscal year, it was 20% over budget. But rather than going to pass that cost on to you, all of our customers, they said, no, we need to try to absorb that through cost-saving measures within the Board of Water Supply, and that's what we did.
No, your program seems very fair and well thought out. It's just that I wonder if you guys looking internally, even though you kept it flat, I mean, can you do more to cut costs?
One of the things we're looking at, and we always look for ways to economize, how we spend our money, be very careful because it's ratepayer money. But one thing that we realize, because the pressures of increased costs of this massive water system, that's not going away. Every year, our cost to operate the system reliably and safely for our community goes up. And it's not anybody's fault. It's the realities of what we face. So we're really now committed to aggressively pursuing outside sources of funds, to look at federal programs to see if we can apply for federal dollars, grant dollars especially, and dollars not coming, more importantly, from our customers, but help to pay for some of our capital program, maybe some of our operating costs as a cost saving. That's going to be the mode. I can commit to you, Mr. Lee, that will be the mode of operation going forward at the Board of Water Supply.
It seems like you guys are doing a good job. It's just like, I was really concerned about the vehicles. Like, why are you choosing?
Regarding the Tacomas, we're required by state law to go through a procurement process. So we have to follow the state procurement code. We basically develop the specifications and we put it out to bid. It just so happens the companies that are winning the bids, and it's on a low bid basis, end up with Tacomas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second question. I want to make sure we answer. You had three parts. I think the second part was about the pipeline cost per mile.
Right. If you break it down, it's $10 million.
It's about $10 million a mile, right?
It sounds it's over 10 million, right?
I'm going to ask JD Norosaki, head of our capital projects, to answer that question. The cost to install, I'm not sure if your question is the cost to install a new pipeline.
No, according to what was shown, the numbers right there.
Oh, yeah.
If you break it down, it's over 10 million per mile.
It is very expensive to install the new pipelines versus the cost to, say, fix a leak. The problem with leaks, it inconveniences our customers and sometimes causes property damage. But the new pipeline is expensive. JD, and I don't know if $10 million a mile is about.
Divide it, it comes out.
Yeah.
Right
Some of these are small pipes.
And in this list, there are some large pipelines that we're looking at doing. Our pipelines, vary from size, maybe from a 4-inch pipe or even smaller, 3-inch, all the way up to a pipeline 42 inches in diameter, almost 4 feet across. Those are what we call our transmission mains. They're like your carotid artery. They help move blood through your body. So likewise, this large transmission mains, they're horribly expensive to replace. And our large pipelines are getting to the age where they need to get replaced.
Well, I think okay, that's good. I don't see any accountability, oversight other than your internal one.
Uh,
So there's, semi-autonomous is good and bad, two-edged sword.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I'll go back in history back to 1929 and what existed before 1929. The Honolulu Board of Water Supply used to serve the city of Honolulu, and the city of Honolulu was much smaller in those days. But what happened was it was under the city. And what happened was uncontrolled water development, lots of leaks in the system, lack of water conservation. And people at that time were actually worried that Honolulu would run out of water. That's kind of amazing thinking of today. So what the territorial legislature did was that because water is life, it is so important that we have to remove as much of the politics as possible in decisions when it comes to water systems, our drinking water systems. So they created the Board of Water Supply. We're still part of the city government, but we are under a semi-autonomous agency under a 7-member board. And they felt that this independent board that's not paid, serving as volunteers, that are not elected to office, so they're not having to win a popularity contest to get there, that they would make the best decisions over time for the good of our community, because ola ikawai, water is life. And I would say I 100% believe in this system. When it comes to oversight, sir, when I first started in February 1st of 2012, the second day on the job as the manager, I stood before the Honolulu City Council and they told me, congratulations, but condolences, because they put in a charter amendment to take over the Board of Water Supply, to put it under the city, under elected decision makers. And I fought hard. So I would say ultimately, if we don't do a good job, you folks, our customers, can tell your city council members that we're not doing a good job and put it under the city. But if that were to happen, I am sad to say that then politics will drive decision making to our critical water system that our community needs to survive. And we make decisions not only for today in the short term or within a political term. We make decisions on a long-term basis, because this water system, this resource, has to be available to our community for generations and generations to come. Thank you, sir.
Ernie, are there also financial audits to ensure the financial integrity?
Every year, we have to do an independent financial audit of how we use our funds. If it's used according to governmental accounting standards requirements. So we have an independent financial audit every year, and that's on our website too. We also get audited for how we use our federal funds. So that's another audit that we're subject to. And we're also subject, if the city council chooses, to a management audit by the city auditor. And we have been audited in the past by the city auditor. Thank you, sir.
I apologize, but you had one more part to your question, and I can't remember what it is. Do you remember what it is? Okay. If you think of it, please let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I couldn't remember that last question. Sorry.
Please come on up.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Peggy Jo Murasuchi. I was married to a local boy. I have one last question regarding these rate increases. How much of this rate increase is driven by the fiasco at Red Hill? What happened was that everybody has cut back on their water usage. If we cut back on our water usage, you don't get as much money to pay your bills. So how much of these rate increases are driven by that? Because I quit watering my yard. Last summer, I had a bowl in my kitchen sink, and every time I washed my hands or washed some plasticware or stuff that doesn't go in the dishwasher, I collected that water and I put it in 5-gallon buckets and I watered my yard with it. I also, and I've done this for years, I can't cut back anymore. I already have some gallon jugs up in my shower, so when the water's getting warm, I collect that cold water because it's perfectly drinkable, and I use it to water plants. I also take short showers and turn the water off when I'm washing my hair or soaping up or whatever. So I already have cut back as much as possible without killing my yard. So my concern is, in the 90s, my parents lived in San Diego. There was a drought. People were asked to cut back on water usage, and they did 40%, some 50%. Then their public utility water supply asked for a rate increase and got it because they weren't getting enough revenue. And then they said, if you can't reduce your water by another 10%, where people have already reduced it, if you can't reduce it even further, we're going to penalize you. You'll get an extra bill. So I know that firsthand that this can happen. What's going to keep us? What's going to keep you from doing that to us?
Thank you, ma'am. I understand the situation in the Western U.S. right now is so dire. Although they've had some recent rains that have replenished their reservoirs. The reservoirs are full again. But remember, they were in a period of drought that may have lasted like 20 years, some of the worst drought. And in general, with climate change, we don't know what that future might be. So their actions was in light of running out of water. We're not at that point yet. But if we're not careful, yeah, we're trying to avoid getting into that situation by being prudent in how we use our resources and encouraging everyone. And thank you, ma'am. I use a bucket in my shower too. It is perfectly drinkable, and I actually save a flush or two after that. And the other thing I do too is, and I think this came out of California, when it's brown, flush it down. When it's yellow, let it mellow. And ma'am, I've been trying to do that at home. But your point is well taken. What we're trying to do is encourage everybody to be good stewards of our water resources, which are finite resources, because basically it's how much rain falls on our island and recharges our underground aquifer. And if that rainfall pattern changes over time, our resource diminishes. So we're asking everybody to be careful. Conserving water and asking our customers to conserve water means that we don't have to pump as much water from our underground aquifer, and we can build up storage underground in these aquifer systems to help store water for future droughts to come. Oh, Red Hill. All I can say, yeah, we are incurring costs because of Red Hill, like installing monitor wells to find out where the contamination's going, also developing alternative water sources so that we don't risk pumping fuel contaminated groundwater into the system serving our customers. There is cost to that, and we don't know what the final cost is going to be at the end of the day, and I can't give you a number at this time. We're keeping all options open, including legal options if necessary. So I just want to reassure everybody we're keeping all options open. Thank you.
Did you remember the
I
third
remembered
part?
it. I remembered it. Hasn't
right.
all gone yet. I guess I don't trust government, especially HECO being a monopoly, and it looks like that's one of the highest costs, and it would behoove Board of Water Supply as well as us to scrutinize I've heard that we had the highest energy rates in the nation, to assess why that is so and if it's justified.
Yeah, thank you. We remember Hawaiian Electric at one time was going to be sold to a Florida company. I think it was Next Era Energy or something. So what we did was we intervened on the PUC case as an intervener in that whole docket related to the sale of the electric utility. And because of that, that really kind of got their attention. And what we do now is on a regular basis, we meet with Hawaiian Electric to talk about opportunities to work jointly together to conserve energy and conserve water. So that continues to this day, years later since that PUC docket. But if necessary, if something comes up, we're not afraid to intervene again in the PUC process. Thank you, sir.
Come on up.
Thank you very much. And first, aloha and mahalo for coming out this evening and sharing your insight with us. First question I had is what are the plans for leak protection devices to be installed at the homes? And is it possible that we could work with Board of Water Supply as a citizen to get a rebate or something if we choose to do that? Obviously, I know a dripping sink, running water costs lots of money. Second thing I'd just like to know, being on a neighborhood board here in Kaneohe, first, I apologize that we didn't have a better attendance for you, but will it be possible to get the PowerPoint that we can share with our associates later this week, actually Thursday evening?
Second question first, it's just easy. The PowerPoint's available on our website. So go to boardofwatersupply.com, and I think you can download the PDF file. Anybody can get access to this PowerPoint. There's also a kind of a pre-recorded video done in-house. We have some very talented folks in our communications office that goes through this presentation in about 12 minutes. So anybody can go and view it. And going to the first question, what was your first?
Water leak detection devices
Oh.
for single family.
So, that's one of the things that I'm kind of interested in, because the thing that is a big water waster in their home is a running toilet. That sometimes as a kupuna, and I notice my hearing is not as good as when I was younger, I can't always hear the toilet running. So that idea, I think in some of the places in California, some of the utilities, they've allowed these additional devices to be installed on the water meter that the homeowner could get access through an online app in their phone to alert them to leaks. So thank you, sir. That's something we'll be looking at. Thank you for the suggestion. Oh, yeah. Kathleen from our communications office.
A couple things. We actually do have a leak flow meter that we're offering a rebate through our consultant through Honeywell, and that information is on our website. If you go to our conservation tab, boardofwatersupply.com. So that's on the customer side of the meter. What Ernie's talking about is something that's a little bit more complex that we're also looking at. And thank you for your comment tonight, Dale. That was really great. The other thing I did want to bring up about the restaurants, we actually have met with the Restaurant Association. And if you run into a restaurant that's not doing their job, please call us, because we will, Stephen right there will call them and give them a nasty gram. Right there, Stephen's right there. Yeah. It's direct number, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Come on back up. I see you got something else. Excellent.
Made me think about the meeting this afternoon, I believe it was, regarding Lahaina and how their fire department ran out of water because the fire melted the electrical system and they just couldn't do it. And I'm wondering, I know this is developing, but if that thought is part and parcel of your program about how to avoid that kind of a disaster, because what happened in Lahaina could happen virtually anywhere here. So that's the first thing, if that's going to be a task force, so to speak.
Thank you for that question. Actually, I forgot. I wrote it here in my notes. The first thing I wanted to do tonight, if we can observe a moment of silence to remember the Ohana suffering in Maui and the loved ones that were lost. Thank you. I am so saddened by what I see unfolding there, and they're still not through it, and the numbers keep on going up. So what I'm doing to try to also see what we can do to actually prepare for it, if should an event occur, because there are red flag days, dry conditions, especially on the leeward side, not so much on the windward side, but really on the leeward side, maybe toward the North Shore a little bit too, is this close coordination between the fire department, our Department of Emergency Management. But one thing I want to point out, remember our electricity bill was over $33 million last year. And that the reason for that is, on average, we have to produce about 145 million gallons a day to supply 1 million people on this island with drinking water every day. Most of that water is pumped. And our pumps need electricity to function. And we have over almost 100 different well pumping stations around the island. But we don't have generators at every single well station because it's an enormous task to do that. So we are going to be looking at that and see what we can do. I think keeping our community informed is very important. I don't even want to second guess what happened on Maui. It's easy to look after the fact and try to do a Monday morning quarterback, but how can we prepare as a community? And one of the things I brought this is from the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, a nonprofit statewide, and the DLNR belongs to it, along with all the county fire departments across the state. Something called Ready, Set, Go, your personal wildland fire action guide. I think it would behoove all of us to get educated and to prepare should this event occur in our community. So also people getting educated and preparing.
And there are a couple of those things going on, and it's not been well received regarding wildfires on the Windward side because we think, oh, we're wet. But that's not true. If you remember in Superstorm Sandy, an entire town of Rockaway was decimated by fire during the storm. I saw areas of the Jersey Shore where something exploded and just wiped out a community during the storm, during the heavy rains. So we're not safe here. And this wildfire program, where's our board? Okay, this really is a program that should be brought strongly to us about how to, well, we know we can't do much of anything. But anyway, that you're going to have these task force and you are looking into it. And yes, that's glad to hear that. On a lighter note, with a pun intended, have the storm water runoff charges been dropped?
So in for the Board of Water Supply, we're about drinking water. And we also do recycled wastewater to replace the need to use high quality drinking water where the uses allow it. Stormwater is under a separate city department. So the stormwater fee is actually under the Department of Facilities Maintenance.
They haven't dropped it yet?
I can't say. I don't know if they dropped it or what their plans are. But what they're trying to do basically is address the needs to upgrade the infrastructure, but also working with the Board of Water Supply, Environmental Services Department, and the Department of Facilities Maintenance, how we can manage water as one resource for our community in an integrated fashion.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing, can you give us kind of an update on the desalinization plants for Kalilua?
Okay, thank you. So that project, we've awarded the construction contract. It's a design, build, operate, and maintain for a 20-year period. So it's the first seawater desalination facility for the Board of Water Supply. Over 30 years ago, as a young engineer at the Board of Water Supply, I was looking at it, and I felt at that time, over 30 years ago, that we need to take that leap and jump into being able to develop the capability to do desalination. So what we have is a project that we're looking at developing. The initial capacity will be 1.7 million gallons a day, with the ability to expand to 5 MGD or 5 million gallons a day. And it would supply water primarily to the Campbell Industrial Park area, but eventually as we expand the capacity, the whole Everplain onto the leeward coast could get some of that water. The reason why we're doing it, like I say, right now we're 100% dependent on groundwater, that originates as rain falling on our watershed areas. Should climate change, and the scary thing about climate change, I really don't know where it's going to go 20, 50, 100 years from now. We need to look at diversifying our resources, not only depending on groundwater that we can pump, basically fresh water floating on salt water below our island of volcanic rock, but we need to look at today building the capability to diversify our resources, including more use of recycled wastewater. Thank you. It could be, in some areas, 25 years. From the time that drop falls on Mauka, and from the time you open your tap, your faucet in your home, in some areas it could be shorter, but we kind of say a long time.
Okay. Any further questions? You already remembered your third one. Oh, this is a fourth. Okay, I'm joking with you.
So I take the water for granted. I came to learn. I just turn on the faucet. I've learned quite a bit, so I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I mean, looks like, if the costs are needed, I support you. I just had questions about it being justified. The other couple things, I'm sure you looked into it, but I wonder if you could comment on using solar for your pumps and also maybe solar hybrid vehicles for cutting energy costs.
In terms of solar and primarily photovoltaics, as part of an energy efficiency project, and you saw our energy use in kilowatt hours actually go down like this over time. We've actually installed over 3 megawatts of photovoltaic renewable energy at our facilities, including on the ground, over some of our parking lots, and also on top of the reservoirs itself. So about 3 megawatts. But I know that even for desalination, there's an opportunity there to try to use renewable energy to offset some of the energy that we need to buy from Hawaiian Electric for that plant. There's also, I think, the issues of battery storage. We haven't really gotten into that. We are purchasing hybrid vehicles. We only have one EV vehicle, but there is a direction from the mayor that was set by a certain time, I think it was 2030, that we need to convert our fleet to EVs.
Okay. And then lastly, I heard of the freshwater lens, and with 1 million plus people, how much of that lens are we using now, that capacity?
So I'll just use it as an example. When the first well was drilled, I think it was 1879 in the Everplain by James Ashley on contract to James Campbell. The water level rose to about 40 feet above sea level. But right now, the water levels over time, because of use, it's around 18 to 20 feet above sea level, depending on the location. So it's diminished. Well, the challenge is, how do we manage this resource? And that's why conservation, even if it's painful, and I thank you for all your efforts. I'm learning from you what I can do at home, is that we need to treat this resource as a gift and only use what we need and not waste it, because it is renewable, but it isn't infinite. So the capacity has gone down over time, but what we want to do is operate it in a way that keeps the resource pretty stable as is. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Any other questions? Sorry, any questions back there? Oh.
Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for being interested in this conversation, and greatly appreciate your time.